Welcome to the Haunted Beard, everybody. My name is Jake. Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to talk about my thoughts for episode 9, titled The After Hours of Season 2 of Severance. This episode sets up everything for the finale, as this is supposed to be Lumen's finest day, the day Cold Harbor is to be completed. Let's take a look at all the plot lines this episode covers and find out what we learned. The episode opens up and Helena Egan is speaking with her father, James, and she says that Mr. Bailiff is to be seen to. We'll come back to this shortly, but first I can't help but wonder if the eggs here she is eating in this scene are a clue in telling us that perhaps Helena is pregnant. Knowing what transpired at the Ortbo a few episodes ago, I can't help but wonder if this is the show's subtle way in telling us that she is pregnant. I also couldn't help but notice the odd painting on the plate Helena is using. It stood out so much, but I'm not sure what it's referencing. Do any of you have any thoughts? Next, we learn that Miss Huang has reached the end of her wintertime fellowship, much like Harmony Cobell did when she was a child. She is told by Mr. Milchick to make a sacrifice to signify the end of her fellowship, and he has her destroy the water ring toss game she liked to play. This felt unnecessarily mean-spirited and cold-hearted on Milchick's part, but I couldn't help but wondering if this is a tradition for all the students who completed this. If that's the case, I wonder what Harmony Cobell had to sacrifice. Things take a rocky turn for both Innie and Audie Dillon in this episode, as they do for his wife Gretchen. Gretchen, who we learn is a 911 dispatcher, confesses to Audie Dillon that she kissed his Innie, to which he gets quite upset and threatens to quit his job at Lumen. Now, whether you think this is actually cheating or not, you have to admit the whole situation is pretty messed up. I like the contrast between this scene, which is emotionally intense and heated, and the scene later on where she talks to Dillon's Innie, which is emotionally devastating. He's never experienced love, and now he has, and now it's gone. I feel bad for him. This devastation leads Dillon to filling out his resignation papers, and we last see him getting on the elevator leaving the severed floor. Could this be the end of Innie Dillon? It could, but I have a feeling it won't be. We learn quite a bit about the character of Bert in this episode. He first appears seemingly having broken into Irv's home, and he discovers Irv's research and investigation he's been doing into Lumen. How Irv came to acquire this information is still a mystery. This connects us back to the opening scene where Helly tells James that Mr. Bailiff is being seen to. Bert asks Irv to go for a drive, and what we learn is that Bert has been more or less a hitman for Lumen. He was a driver and would take targets to the location where they were to be terminated. Whether he actually pulled the trigger is a little unclear, but he at least played a part in carrying out the hits. And now Irv is his next assignment. We also learn that Bert is Lumen through and through, as both his Innie, who worked in O&D, and his Audie, who worked as a driver/hitman, worked for Lumen. Not only that, but he has been doing this for 20 years. If you remember what Fields said to Irv during the dinner party, that Bert has been there for 20 years. And at that time, Bert plays the comment off like Fields was mistaken. But he wasn't. This storyline builds to a tender and bittersweet moment as we learn that Bert decides against carrying out his hit and takes Irv to a train station. He tells him to get on and go and to tell no one when and where he gets off. He also says that he can never come back to Kier because it isn't safe. And then, in a last attempt, Irv tells Bert he has never felt love in his entire life and says he is ready, hoping for Bert to reciprocate. But he can't. Irv gets on the train and leaves. I don't think this will be the official end of these characters in the show, but if it is, it's a great way to conclude their stories and send them off. The next thing we learn involves Mark, Devon, and Cobell. Harmony meets them out in the woods, having returned from Salt's Neck in the previous episode. Cobell tells Mark Gemma will be dead upon completion of Cold Harbor. Now, this could be a literal death, or it could also just be the death of her memories of Mark, to where it would be like she never knew him. To say Mark is upset here is a massive understatement. His rage is nearly boiling over. With everything in him, he wants to lash out at Cobell and tell her to leave. But at Devon's persistence, he realizes she is the only option. And so Mark and Devon go with Harmony to the birthing cottage to access Mark's innie. Mr. Milchick has some revealing moments in this episode. Perhaps my favorite scene is his conversation with Mr. Drummond. What a fantastically written and performed scene this was. I like how this scene subtly references back to the scene in the break room from season 1. Now, Mr. Milchick is the one being asked to repeat "I'm sorry" over and over again. Here he gets a taste of his own medicine, and he sees how dehumanizing it is. This is the first time in the entire show where I liked Mr. Milchick and was actively cheering him on. "Devour feculence" might be the best line in the show so far.
It means eat shit, Mr. Drummond.
Following this, we see Milchick receive a phone call from Mark. Mark comes clean and tells him he isn't sick, but just needs a day. And here Milchick gets emotional as Mark pleads and appeals to his humanity. And this is the first time we see some real humanity rise to the surface of Milchick's tough exterior. This was a significant moment for his character. Now, with regard to Helly, we don't see her too much, but she does play a pivotal role. She returns to the break room and retrieves Irv's note he left behind the poster on the wall. This note contains a drawing of what we have already learned is the elevator to the testing floor, and now here we learn that it also contains the directions to the elevator. We see Helly attempting to memorize them towards the end of the episode. We then see someone is watching her in the background, and it turns out to be Jane Egan. She has no idea who it is, but Jane looks at her with disappointment and anger and says, "You tricked me." All we can do is speculate about what he's referring to, but I have a feeling Helena must have some secrets she's been hiding from her father, and he's just discovered what they are. The final sequence is Mark, Devon, and Cobell arriving at the cottage. And here's where we learn two very important things. One, in using Devon as their cover to get in by pretending she's pregnant, Harmony says to the security guard it's one of James, which tells us that Jane Egan has impregnated multiple women and has multiple children we don't know about. Could one of the major characters be an Egan child and not know it? Part of me thinks Harmony may have given birth to one of his children and was then severed to forget about it. The second thing we learn here gives us insight into the episode title. The title, The After Hours, is also the same title of an episode of the classic show The Twilight Zone. Not only that, the name Harmony gives the security guard is the same name of the main character in the Twilight Zone episode, Marcia White. Luckily enough for me, since The Twilight Zone is one of my all-time favorite shows, I was already familiar with this episode. Spoiler alert in case you haven't seen it, but this is a story about a young woman who has a bizarre experience on an empty department store floor. It turns out she is actually a mannequin who is given a chance to live and experience 1 month as a real, live person before turning back into a mannequin. Who is this referencing? Who is the Marcia White of Severance? Is it Gemma? Is she a Lumen mannequin they allowed out into the real world? Let me know your theories down below. This episode ends with the arrival at the cottage. Mark's innie takes over and Devon takes him upstairs to speak with Cobell. There are a lot of questions this episode leaves us with. What will Harmony tell Mark about Miss Casey? Will she help him infiltrate Lumen to get her out? What other secrets might she divulge here? Is Helly gonna find the elevator? I fully expect her to, but what might she discover when she gets there to the testing floor? And how did she, or Helena, trick James? There are of course more questions, and I don't expect to get all the answers. But whatever answers we do get and whatever new discoveries are made, I can't wait, as things are set up for what's looking like a wild finale. Well, those are my thoughts, and that is what I learned from episode 9 of season 2. Hit me up down in the comments, let me know what you learned, what I maybe missed, and what theories you have going forward. Would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for watching, I greatly appreciate it. If you got anything out of this video, go ahead and do me a favor and do not click that subscribe button. unless you want to be haunted by the beard.